Hi guys, ready to shit on some books with me? So this is empty, this isn't. But I wanted to keep the same intro that I've had for like 5 years. Long fucking time. Let's get into it. Alright, so every year this is one of my all-time favorite videos to film. This is going to be the worst books of 2019. We're going to be doing it a little bit differently than I did it last year or the years that I've done this. Usually it's just 10 books that I didn't like and I just rant about them. But this time we're going to do like kind of everything put in together. So I've got some of the books that I did rant reviews on, or I'm gonna mention the rant reviews. You can just go watch the fucking rant reviews, to be honest. And then we're gonna talk about some disappointing books, some DNFs, some books that I didn't do rant reviews on, but I wanted to with a burning passion in my soul. Without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so if you guys have been on the channel, you know that I started off the year with A Taste of Blood Wine by somebody. That video has now blown up. I highly recommend watching it. It's so much fun. I had a lot of fun talking about this one. It's a vampire book that just went off the fucking rails halfway through. Actually, not halfway through, like 2 pages through. But I highly recommend watching the rant review. It's one of my most viewed videos now, and I had lots of fun reading and trashing that book. Let's be real. I wouldn't really say that this video that I did was specifically a rant review, but I definitely will say that this is one of the biggest disappointments of the year, and that is King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. I did a video discussion for this book, and I did not like this book whatsoever. I felt like this particular novel did nothing for the world. It didn't grow the world in any way. We didn't really get a lot of good personal connections, I feel like, between the characters. There were a lot of things that I was hopeful for this particular installment in this world, and this book just didn't do it. And at the end of the book, we brought back a villain that I feel like should have stayed gone, personally. Hot take, but that's just me though. So in the year of our Lord 20 by teen, we have shameless grabs for attention. I read After, and I still have this. I hated this. Watch my rant review. I don't want to talk about it. It's bad. It's just bad. And on that note, I also read this. I did a rant review. This is in fact garbage and should not exist in the real world. But here we are. It's a thing. It was bad, and you should go watch the video because... Alright, so let's move on to the books that I did not do rant reviews on, but I wanted to in the moment. I just didn't have the time, or they were like library books, which I tend not to have the time to do a rant review on because I have to return them. We have Ship of Smoke and Steel by Django Wexler, I want to say. This is one of those books that really fucking pissed me off in the YA section this year because it was written in a way that should not have been a young adult book, and it was vaguely disgusting because it follows this girl who obviously is written by a white man, because not only does she not have any characterization nor any empathy for the people around her, she also kind of randomly all of a sudden decides that she's bisexual because the author seems to have wanted to write that into his plotline. But basically this book has a lot of sexual violence towards specifically lesbian or bisexual women, and the world building, the plot make no fucking sense, and it was just a piece of absolute goddamn garbage. And then moving on, we have Indecent. And this book, I don't even honestly know who the author was. I picked it up on a whim because it was during Smutathon, and this book is supposed to be like a taboo relationship between a teacher and her student. And this is in fact a taboo relationship between a teacher and a student, but the way that this was written was as if white feminism decided to defend anything and everything a young white female does, even though what she did in the book is reprehensible and gross, and trying to blame a 16-year-old boy for a 23-year-old's actions is bullshit and fucked up in any span of the imagination. It was disgusting. I hated every second of it. And for some reason I read all of it because I kept thinking, oh yeah, she's gonna get like her comeuppance. She's gonna get punished. She's gonna understand what she did is wrong. And no, she did not at all. It was absolutely awful and terrible. So there's that. And then we have Feast of Sparks by... I'm not looking up these author names. So this is the sequel to drink every time I can't remember something. Something Thorns. So this is a smutty series, and in this particular installment we had a setup where this group of friends who had a orgy. The last book continue to keep having orgies in this book, but there is just something that was done in this particular novel that really fucking pissed me off, and I feel like the author did it on purpose to make the reader feel gross and disgusted at themselves, and I just find that to be nasty. Just fucking nasty. And if you're the type of author that will write something into your book to mind fuck your reader after the book is already over, you're a piece of shit. Personally, like, I don't like manipulative writing like that. I don't like it at all. And honestly, I feel like it's just like lazy writing in the first place, because not only did you show that you can't foreshadow something enough for your reader to know it, you're literally just changing your storyline halfway through to satisfy some sort of sick curiosity you have. Otherwise, whatever. I'm not reading that author anymore. I read a lot of them this year and I'm not interested anymore. All right, so let's get into the disappointments this year. These ones I wouldn't say that I absolutely hated. I just didn't fucking like them. Let's start with Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chakshi. This is, I think, my first book that I actually read all the way through of Roshani's. I enjoyed this to some extent. I do feel like this was marketed really heavily as the next Six of Crows. It's actually brought too much hype to this, but I felt like the characters that we have in this book are modeled too closely off of Six of Crows. Like a lot of them were like too similar in some ways. At the same time, I feel like this book, the world building was getting in front of the characters and the characters were getting in front of the world building, and it just made it really confusing. This is actually set in like a Belle Epoque era. It's got this beautiful like historical narrative and it's got some really interesting world building, but I just couldn't grasp any interest in the characters just because I felt so disengaged with their storyline, because they seem so much like Six of Crows, but they are not Six of Crows, if that makes any sense. I will say that the cliffhanger of this book made me want to keep reading on in the series, so maybe I will read the next book and I will enjoy it better, but at the same time, it didn't work for me, and it's mostly because the marketing of this book was done poorly, personally. Not on the author, mostly on the marketing. And another book that had marketing done that I feel like was done poorly is Aurora Rising by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. Yes, you heard it, Jay Kristoff, it's on one of these lists. Aurora Rising was supposed to be about a gang of misfits who are going on some sort of quest to save the galaxy. And in all honesty, they're not misfits. They're all like the top of the field and they are doing something that is illegal and they shouldn't be doing. And there's a trope in this book that's really fucked up. Ella Jacob Renesmee imprinting bullshit, and I just really hate that. Can we just stop that? People are people, they're not penguins. We don't like imprint on people. I don't find it sexy, I don't find it cute, and half the time it's just a way for the writers to skip anything to do with building a relationship. It's like basically unquestioned insta-love, and I don't fucking like it, especially because it was coded into somebody's culture. Didn't love it, didn't like the world building, didn't really like any of the points of view, and I just felt like the only thing about this book that was good was Finian, so there's that. And he wasn't in the book enough for me to be like, yes, this is amazing. Another book that I felt like just was really hyped and just didn't do it for me was Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I loved Enchantment of Ravens, or For Ravens Enchantment, her first book, because it was slimmer, and I feel like that lent itself to her writing style, whereas Sorcery of Thorns is a thick boy and it didn't really need to be. I felt like the main character was just stupid for the sake of being stupid, and then the character or the love interest guy was like being Will Herondale but not Will Herondale. You shouldn't go full Will Herondale if you are not Will Herondale. And I just feel like the world was really, really interesting, but specifically the villain really drove me nuts, because the villain would straight up tell the main character what he was planning and then the main character would just like not know what to do with it. Like, it was very strange. Also, at the end of the book, I felt like the villain didn't have any other reason to be the villain other than he was a villain and he was very mustache twirly. So that kind of got annoying with that. I might try reading it over again, maybe listening to it on audiobook. I did love Silas. Don't freak out at me. I love Silas, but I otherwise could not stand pretty much any other character in that fucking book. And then we had The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh, which is another YA book that I just had hopes for, and this just didn't execute anything very well. This was supposed to be a New Orleans, like early or like right before the turn of the century, and it's just Not good. There was supposed to be vampires. It was supposed to be like this beautiful new YA vampire novel, and I just didn't get that from this. It could have been more like that, but I just feel like once again we were kind of caught up in our own like world building tangents and just things. It didn't felt like this story had any focus or focal point, and I just couldn't really grasp what was happening every turn, and I didn't like the fact that once again we had another love interest who was just being Will Herondale, who he's not Will Herondale, so stop trying to be Will Herondale. If you haven't a clue who Will Herondale is, he's from the Infernal Devices, get your shit together. I only fucked with Odette in this book, I'm not gonna lie. She was the only relevant character, and I don't remember pretty much anything else. Alright, moving on, we have Fix Her Up. This was another one of those books that I feel like I could have really done like a fun review on. I do think I read this during Booktubeathon, Reading Rush, whatever. So I had like some of my vlogged reactions to this, but I actually looked up my notes on this book because, oh man, they're funny. So I think I'm just gonna read some of these to you because Fix Her Up is about like a, you know, second chance kind of romance. Well, no, it's like a girl next door romance, and people were freaking out about it, but so the things that I've got here is, note-wise, is that she named her vibrator Dale, like D-A-L-E, and she's apparently a virgin. I don't know anyone who names their sex toys, but I feel like virgins really don't. So my notes were, so fake dating isn't fake if they make out immediately after, and then I just had one note that just said, the wet, and I don't remember what that's about, but I'm assuming it had something to do with smut, because the only thing about this book that was great, mostly, was the smut scenes. I have a note here that says, so he's got a huge dick, right? It's like, it's part of the character, I have to share this with you, and he just slams it on home, like, ow! That was a note that I wanted to share. I just feel like the one thing about specific books like this, where there's a huge, like, love for it, and then everyone's talking about how great it is, and then sometimes people read it and they're like, nah, maybe not. I like kind of looking at those books and just kind of taking them apart a little bit and notating what other people find to be sexy and really interesting. I just feel like I was on the side of this didn't do it for me in any way, specifically the clown costumes. Now it's just not it. I'm not gonna tell you anything about what it's about because I can't remember it, but I do remember that she named her fucking vibrator Dale. Moving on, changing gears, we're gonna do Daisy and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Abrupt mood change. So this book is about a rock band in the 1970s, and it is a interview format. I listened to the audiobook and I highly recommend doing that, but I will say that this was like a 3-star read for me. I just felt like it was just not salacious enough for it to have been about a 1970s rock band. I got to the end of the book and I was like, that's it? That's how we're ending it? Like, I just didn't feel anything. I didn't really give a shit about the characters in the band. I didn't really give a shit about Daisy. Like, I felt like she was interesting and could have been done more evocatively. But I just feel like we didn't have a lot of like crazy things happen in a book about a 1970s rock band. I don't know a lot about 1970s rock bands, but I'm pretty sure they did more than what Daisy Jones and the Six did. I feel like we could have just had more, you know? Just a little bit more. And then another book that I felt like was rather disappointing was Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. I do have an entire spoilery reading vlog on here, and I kind of talk about my thoughts on this. I just feel like for this series, this could have had a really interesting and exciting political ending, and it just was kind of nothing. It was literally Queen of Nothing. I just felt like the one thing about this book is that like we get the main character back to a place, I'm not spoiling anything for you, but then nothing happens for the rest of the book. Like, the beginning happens and then there is no tension, there's no stakes, there's nothing. I get it, like, you might really like this if you really like these characters, which I don't like these characters all that much. I liked their banter and I liked the kind of tension they had, but once that tension's gone, it's like there's no reason to read this book anymore, sorry. But yeah. Alright, so we're gonna move on to the did not finishes of the year. I wanted to go over these because I feel like some of these were I'm still really bitter about them. So the first one we have is A Discovery of Witches by, I want to say Patrick Harkness, but that's wrong. Whatever. So this book is about a love story between a witch and a vampire, and that's supposed to be like super forbidden, and I got about like almost 100 pages to the end of this book before I had to give the fuck up because it is so pretentious and it's so like overly done and stylized in a way that's like better than you, but it's a paranormal fucking romance and I don't understand why. And I had to like just cut it short because the main dude tells the girl, I will murder you before I let anyone hurt you. And I just have to go, what? I don't know what about this book was like sexy to people, because like it wasn't good. It just wasn't done well, and I really hoped it would, because I was excited to start that series this year, and oh boy, was it not great. And then we have Women's War. Don't know the author on this one. This was supposed to be a very feminist forward fantasy, and it is about a world where these sex workers, of all people, are basically doing this sacrifice, and they martyr themselves so that the women in the world can control their own fertility. And I started reading it. I got, I think, about 100-ish pages in, and had to DNF it, because not only does the writing style and the way the world works is that all the sex workers were looked down upon, and even after they did this amazing magical spell and saved a lot of women and gave women control over their bodies, they were looked down upon, and the whole real kind of connotation was that no matter what they did or who they were, because they were sex workers, they were inherently bad and not to be trusted and just shitty people. And I just like couldn't do that. I was like, okay, well, I'm done. This is weird. I did not continue after that, because all of the main female characters were terrible and all of the men were evil. And I was just like, there's nothing going for this book right now. I need to stop reading it. And then we have Once and Future. This was a gender-bent retelling of King Arthur. This book specifically, I think I did get halfway through and I just had to put it down, because my good lord, it had no plot line. Literally just everyone was just fucking, like, all the time. Like, literally one person would walk into the room, they'd be like, you're hot, and they would have sex. Like, I don't mind a little bit of sexual tension in books. This is a young adult book, so I felt like for it being a young adult book, having a lot of great diversity and like a huge cast and wonderful characters, it was interesting, but also everyone was too horny the entire time. I needed everyone to cut it out for like 10 fucking seconds, because it was a sci-fi retelling of King Arthur with a female King Arthur. That sounds fucking sick, yo. But no, we can't focus on that for 10 seconds and keep our hands to ourselves? Okay. And then we got Black Prism by Brent Weeks. I did start this year. I got about 30 to 75 pages into it and could not do it. For this year specifically, I refuse to read more books by authors of privilege that are just not well written, personally. I know this is a well-lauded series, but like the main fucking characters in this book were terrible, and the treatment of women outright was just not great, and I heard that it wasn't gonna get better, and I'm not putting time into a thick-ass series for shitty female characters and world building that wasn't really even that interesting. So there's that. I didn't do a disclaimer. Alright guys, so those were the books that I fucking hated in 2019. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. As y'all know, I have opinions, so if you clicked on this fucking video, I'm not sorry, basically. So leave down below in the comments your least favorite book of 2019, or books that you want me to read and review if you think it'd be funny. I'm gonna go now guys, like, subscribe, all the good stuff, bye!